The season 5 finale of Game of Thrones was cliffhanger central, leaving just about every major plotline up in the air. So what I'm going to do is talk about where things could be headed in season 6. This video is going to be all about the big event for the Watch and what that means for the future of Jon Snow and the Night's Watch. Just to give you a heads up, there's going to be speculation and possible spoilers for the show and the books in this video. Before we start, in memory of Jon Snow, our friends at fun.com have given us a fantastic Funko Pop vinyl figure to give away to you, our awesome viewers. All you need to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment about Jon Snow or the Night's Watch on this video. So Jon Snow got Julius Caesared in episode 10 and he didn't even see it coming. He may have realised he was the most hated man in Castle Black, but he still let Samwell Tarly leave him friendless apart from Dolorous Edd at the Wall. In the end, Jon Snow really did know nothing. If he'd had any sense, he'd have been using the giant One-One or Tormund the Wildling as a bodyguard. There was loads of foreshadowing throughout the season for who was going to stab Jon Snow. All those glares from Ollie, and then of course Jon deciding to keep his enemy Alliser Thorne near rather than send him off. And of course Bowen Marsh appeared as well. Oh, and by the way, it was interesting that Alliser Thorne stabbed Jon for the Watch, as when Sir Alliser was leading the Watch during the Battle of Castle Black in season 4, he told Jon that leadership means being second-guessed by twats. Well, it seems like Sir Alliser's been doing quite a lot of his own second-guessing this season about Jon's decision to work with the Wildlings to save the Watch and everyone else from the White Walkers. I wonder how long he and the Night's Watch will live to regret that fact next season. Now, the way for the Watch happened made me think of Janos Slynt's beheading. Jon hesitated at first, but when Slynt said how afraid he was, Jon screwed up his face and then beheaded him. Ollie was also hesitant at first, but when Jon said Ollie's name, the young boy screwed up his face as well and stabbed Jon hard. There were also shades of the Red Wedding about Jon's death, which was similar to the way Robb Stark ended. And that probably wasn't a coincidence, given the fact that this episode was directed by David Nutter, who also directed the Red Wedding episode. On a side note, the way Arya killed Meryn Trant also reminded me of how Catelyn Stark killed Walder Frey's wife, and how she was ultimately killed herself with a slit to the throat. Jon's death also reminded me of Ned Stark's death, especially because of the constant parallels that have been drawn between Jon and Ned this season. For example, Stannis told Jon that "you're as stubborn and honourable as your father," and Jon replied, "I can imagine no higher praise." To which Stannis said, "I didn't mean it as praise. Honour got your father killed." Straight after the season 5 finale, Entertainment Weekly released an interview they'd done with Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow. In it, they asked him, "Is Jon really dead?" Now he replied, "This is my understanding of it." He also said, "If anything in the future is not like that, then I don't know about it. It's only in David and Dan and George's heads." And he added, "I'm not coming back next season and I'm looking for movies for next year." That's fine. It doesn't mean that his character's definitely out of the show forever, because as we know, they skipped storylines in seasons, like for example Isaac Hempstead Wright as Bran and Hodor and everyone else in that storyline wasn't in season 5. But they will be returning for season 6. Of course, he could still be filming for season 6, but given all the leaks during filming this year and as the show came out, it'd be really difficult to keep his return under wraps. Maybe he won't be in season 6 a lot and he's shot some of that stuff already. Also, another little thing from the interview that makes me think he'll be returning is that he didn't get a parting gift like, for example, Rose Leslie, who played Ygritte, did, and yet he's a major character in the show. And of course, it wouldn't be the first time an actor had to be creative with the truth to avoid spoiling major plot points in an interview. Still, there are ways that Jon Snow could return and fulfill Samwell Tarly's words that "I've been worrying about Jon for years, but he always comes back." First of all, the Red Woman Melisandre has returned to Castle Black. In fact, in the book, she never left. And like Thoros of Myr did with Beric Dondarrion, it's possible that she could bring Jon Snow back to life with the power of the Lord of Light. In fact, after the sacrifice of Shireen in episode 9, Perhaps her power has even increased. Now, when someone's brought back to life, there are side effects. For example, a person loses some of their memories and is less themselves, as Beric Dondarrion told Arya in season 3. So maybe Jon Snow won't be exactly the Jon Snow we know. In other words, he'll be someone else. Something else, to use Oliver Queen's words from Arrow. And the fact that Jon is stabbed beside a cross adds to the vibe that he's going to have a Christ-like resurrection. Another possibility is that Jon wargs into Ghost. Now, in the TV show, we didn't see Jon's direwolf at the end of the episode when he was attacked. However, in the books, as Jon is stabbed by his fellow Night's Watchman, he says the word ghost. And remember episode 7 this season when some of the Night's Watchmen attacked Gilly and taunted Sam by saying, "Your friend Jon Snow's not here now." And who appeared right at that moment? Yes, it was Ghost. So both the show and the book seem to be hinting that Jon Snow might warg into Ghost. And during a Q&A event at Oxford University, Kit Harington said that he'd like to be a warg and put himself into a wolf. To which Dan Weiss replied, "2 words for you, season 6. And there's another possibility. Remember when we saw the White Walkers and the Night's King during the Hard Home episode? Well, there was a definite Night's Watch vibe to their clothing. Dressing the White Walkers like the Men in Black in the show is likely a nod to book readers that the Night's King in the series is also a former Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. All of which makes me wonder if the fact that one of the wildlings called Jon King Crow means that something more is going to happen between Jon and the Night's King. And there was also that long, lingering look between the Night's King and Jon Snow just before the Chief Iceman raised his arms, and with them, his horde of new wildling wights. Was it just one former Lord Commander, the Night's King, observing the new Lord Commander, Jon Snow? Or could it be that the Night's King isn't just a former Lord Commander, but Jon's long-lost uncle and fellow Night's Watchman, Benjen Stark? And could Jon be reanimated by the Night's King and join his band of walkers and wights? But what if Jon Snow were actually, horror of horrors, dead? Well then, he'd just be the latest in a long line of Starks to kick the bucket in nasty, treacherous circumstances. And it's not as if Game of Thrones hasn't killed off big characters in the past. So has all the apparent foreshadowing for Jon's comeback in the show just been red herrings? It's entirely possible, after all, there have been others, and everyone from Kit Harington to John Bradley, the episode's director David Nutter, and the showrunners are doing interviews saying that Jon is dead. And the official HBO viewer guide says that Ollie conspired with other brothers to murder Jon Snow and delivered the fatal cut. So are we all just in denial? Say it ain't so. As I mentioned earlier, of course, just like they skipped Bran's storyline this season, there's always a chance they leave the Watch and the Wall until season 7. Samwell and Gilly are on their way to Old Town, where he wants to become a maester like Maester Aemon, who died this season. Samwell's already killed a White Walker with dragonglass, and the show seems to be foreshadowing Sam's future importance again in the battle against the White Walkers, as Samwell told Jon that at the Citadel's library he'd be able to learn about history, strategy, healing and other things that'll help when they come. So will Sam discover a treasure trove of dragonglass or Valyrian steel from his readings at the Citadel? Okay, those are my thoughts about what might happen for Jon Snow in season 6. Do you think Jon Snow's really dead? If not, how would you like to see him return? Don't forget, for a chance to win a Funko Pop vinyl figure, subscribe and leave a comment about Jon Snow or the Night's Watch on this video. Congratulations to Spartone14 for winning our last competition. I'll send you a message shortly to get your details. By the way, if you haven't seen it yet, I've interviewed Brennick O'Connor, who plays Ollie, who betrayed Jon Snow this episode, and he's got some really interesting stuff to say, so click here to watch that. And I'll have more season 6 prediction videos coming up. Thanks for watching and see you next time. And remember, if you're not watching Jan G on GOT, you know nothing.